doing a tire rotation for the Bronco. I realized I never made a video about setting up the bead locks. There are some good videos online for that. Maybe I'll do it in the future. I kind of missed the opportunity when I set this up. I was just in a hurry to get it done. But every time I do a tire rotation, because I have directional tires, I actually have to flip the tire. That's definitely an inconvenience, but one that I personally think is worth having the directional tires, or at least the Trepidors. I've been really happy with them. So every time I do a rotation, well, actually the first time I did a rotation, I only had to flip one tire. I do a 5-tire rotation, right? So I had set up the spare so that it was ready to go right to the back right, but I had to flip the front right directionally as it went to the back left. But now I'm actually gonna have to flip 2, and probably from here on out, if I think about it, I'm gonna have to do 2 at a time. The diagonal flip, and then the front to the back, we'll have to get a directional flip at least either now or when I do it the next time. In this case, maybe I'll do all 3, but right now I at least have to flip the spare to go to the back right, the front right to the back left. I've already gotten these loosened up. I started by going, I didn't do a star pattern. You should always do a star pattern for, I say star, this is a 24-point star, to get it almost to torque, and then you can kind of go around the circle when you're doing that half a foot-pound to finalize it. To get it loose, I just went around the world, but I did like an 1/8 of a turn, very, very small amount around. I'm sure somebody will be upset by that, but did a very small amount several times around. Now they're all basically loose. There's a decent amount of preload, obviously, in the rubber, so that's why you don't want to undo all of them as you go, and then you have one that's pinching down all the load. It's just not going to be good for it. So if you're going to go around the world, make sure you do a small amount, and even if you do a star pattern, you shouldn't remove them all the way. You're going to have the same problem. So you want to ease them out just like you ease them in. Once I get this ring out, I'm going to try something different. I should also mention, the only reason I'm using the torque wrench is because I was kind of curious to see what my breakaway torque was. I only had one exceed 16 foot-pounds on the way out. They're supposed to be 15.5 with anti-seize, so that's pretty good. They're all right about there, and I do check that regularly. This tool I found in the back of the truck, or not back of the truck, the back of the shop. This is to help pop the bead off. Last time that was an absolute chore. Obviously I can unbolt the front side, but the back, if you don't have the equipment for that, it is a huge chore. I ended up setting this up on some wood blocks and pressing down on it with the forks on the tractor while I went around with basically a gigantic fork that's specifically designed to help pop the bead off. Got it off, but I wasted a lot of time. So I'm going to try out this tool and see if I can get some good leverage on it to pop that bead off. If this works, then I'm going to be a lot happier about doing this rotation than I was last time. I always start this process by totally removing the valve core. Just got a little tip here to unscrew that. Not only does it make it way faster to empty the air out of the tire, you just want to have that compliance for when you're messing with the bead. Obviously, if I drain it to 0, there shouldn't be any back pressure on it, but I like having basically no resistance to pressing on the tire when I pop this bead off. Show you guys what it looks like. Obviously, some of the paint has worn away from underneath the washers. Obviously, you can see I got some rock rash since I actually wheel these. The bolts themselves look good. Obviously, there's a layer of junk. It's actually easier to tell here. There's a gap. Obviously, this will tighten up when you compress it down, but there's no way to stop junk from getting in there. But I'm definitely a fan of using anti-seize. I think most bead locks will come with 2 torque specs, with and without anti-seize. Definitely a fan of anti-seize. I think it's going to give you a more consistent torque down. There's just so many variables at play. So if you're not using anti-seize, I don't know. I just don't have the same confidence when you throw anti-seize on those bolts. The torque is probably pretty reliable, and it helps maybe keep some of the junk out, at least at the lower ends of the bolts. I'll probably still clean the threads out and put fresh anti-seize in, just so they look good as new. I'll see if I can pop this off by hand. I might need to wedge in there. If you guys haven't seen these rings before, they normally have a bite pattern. Once I get this off, you'll see that just helps it get a little extra grab. Just needed a screwdriver, popped it loose. So here's that pattern I was talking about. And then here's the rubber. So one thing to be a little concerned about is when you flip the direction of the tire, this indentation is now going to be on the smooth bead on the opposite side of the tire. I was definitely concerned about that, but it does work because I've already done a tire rotation. Didn't make a video, but this one here was on the front right and had no issues holding there right off the bat. So I imagine that this indentation will pop right out of the rubber once it, given time, or especially, smeared against a smooth surface under pressure, it'll work itself out. You can see there's definitely junk that collects. Now this was the spare, so this wasn't even junk from wheeling. This is just collecting since I had this at the bottom of the, this was facing the ground. There we go. I wanted to show you guys what this looked like before I give it a shot. Unfortunately, I'm not sure I'm going to have luck with it set up how it is. As you can see, this lever is way up high and the angle of attack is not very good here. Maybe I can, stomp on it, get it under the bead. But my guess is, well, for one, this is meant for a smaller tire than this. I may be able to move that joint up. Obviously, then I'm going to have to apply more leverage or put a pipe on there to extend it. But I think I need to adjust this position. Maybe I can drill a set of holes here and somewhere else on the pipe to kind of shorten it up and move it out, get a little more downward pressure. I'll try it like this and see, but I just wanted to show you guys what it looked like before I mess with it. Well, I moved the pivot up the rod a little bit and also moved it on this fork to lower the angle. And I'm getting good purchase here, but I noticed that I'm starting to bend the rod. So I'm pretty sure, I put a little cheater bar there, that if I give this a little more force, I think I'm just going to end up ruining this. So before I take it any further, I think I may reinforce this. Quick and dirty way to beef it up. I basically just put my cheater bar right over the original tube. Now this pipe is not necessarily very strong stuff. It's obviously significantly larger, but even I could tell just from drilling through both the pipe and this underlying steel that it's not high strength stuff. So if this doesn't work, I'll maybe work on a gusset or just go back to the original press on it with the forks. But I'll give this a go and let you guys know how it goes. It took me an hour and a half. This is one of those jobs where I think I'd rather take it to the shop. I wanted to give it a shot with this tool. Now, actually, most of the time of that hour and a half was kind of messing with things. The original pivot was there. I made a new pivot there. Of course, I welded on the new bar, made another new pivot, ended up grabbing the skid steer to push down with the forks, right where I put that rubber. Had to go around 4 times, to press it off. Long story short, I think with it set up now, I could probably get one of these off in, maybe 15 minutes, but it took me a whole lot longer than that to get it figured out. You also see I got the strap around here. That's because with the slight angle that it has, when you press down on this, it ends up wanting to thrust the tire out. Now there's actually a hook in the base that's supposed to grab the wheel. For one, it's not even set up right for this tire size. 2, I didn't want it to, because I didn't want that hook to end up scratching up the front face. So I just covered it up with some rubber inner tube so that it wouldn't scratch anything and relied on the ratchet strap. Not a big deal. I'm kind of torn on whether I want to do this going forward. It is a chore. If you may be wondering why not just take it to a shop. Most tire shops don't want to handle bead locks. However, I could probably talk a tire shop into taking them just to pop the bead off. It's a whole lot easier to set it. You just need air pressure. So I might try that next time. Just take a couple wheels off, take it to a shop, have them pop the bead off for me, do the rest of the rotation. Really easy. But I'm still tempted. I like to be self-reliant. I'm tempted to make this work. I could probably buy a better tool than that. But, it's all a learning experience. Missed a little bit of the fun. My brother-in-law gave me a hand, but we got both tires off the bead. I used tire irons to get the wheels completely out. Just needed the extra leverage. But to put them in, you actually don't really need a tire iron. You just gotta, stomp on it. I've seen some people literally throw the wheel in. I can get it about, 3/4 of the way in when you just toss it in. Of course, that's with the entire outside soaped up or with a soapy water mix. But I only get about 3/4. Then I just stomp on the rim and then it'll pop in. Worth noting that you probably want the spot with the TPMS sensor to go in first so that as you're popping it in, it's not getting caught up on it. But otherwise, it's pretty easy to get it in. So next step is setting up the bead lock. And as you can see, this will lay in most of the way just fine, but unless you got a special tire, I don't think you're gonna get the whole thing to sit, on this rim. This one's actually looking pretty good. Maybe they kind of break in. Wow. I'm gonna eat my own hat, I guess. So this one is sitting. What I was gonna say is in the past, if you can't get this to sit all the way around, then what I do is get as much of it as I can. Again, nice, clean, soaped up. And then I put the bead lock ring in, finger tight, not all the bolts, but some of the bolts all the way around. And then I take a punch and a hammer or a mallet, and I kind of ease in the pressure on a few of the bolts and tap it in all the way. And you want to be careful because you don't want to puncture or damage the rubber. It doesn't take much. You can use just the blunt end of a punch or a piece of wood, something that'll fit in there just to give it a little nudge as you work down the torque, and then you'll get the whole thing seated. In this case, I guess it's sitting. Maybe just takes a little bit of break-in period. Again, this is the second tire rotation for this guy. So this one should be pretty easy. I'll put the ring on, throw in all the bolts, and I'll probably do them all finger tight, and then I'll start my star pattern. All right, this is what one of the bolts looks like. There's 48 of these, 24 on each wheel. I basically just ran these with a cloth on the threads and the cordless impact to do a rough job cleaning them up. Wanted to make sure that I got the dirt and grime and old anti-seize out so I could get a nice clean layer. I got this one started. Now these haven't been torqued down. I was going to show you guys how I save a little bit of time. You absolutely do not want to torque or do your final torque with this, right? Now, in my case, I have these 3 settings. They're pretty handy. We also have some DeWalt stuff here on the farm that does not have adjustable torque. If you do not have a super low torque setting, I wouldn't risk using this. I just run them by hand. Because I have a super low setting on this cordless impact, I run the star pattern on all 24 to get everything snug. And these are by no means tight. The torque wrench will take them the rest of the way, but this helps me take up, half of the spinning that would otherwise just take forever by hand with this. And I'm confident that I'm not overstressing anything because I have a super low torque setting on this. Just wanted to let you guys know if you're aware, or if your tool has that low torque setting, take advantage of it. If not, do it the right way, do it the long way. All right, if you haven't used a torque wrench before, obviously there's a lot of resources online. This one goes up to 45 foot-pounds, which is pretty low for a torque wrench. I wanted that specifically for precision, for lower torques. I have a larger one for other chassis components. The way this works is this collar rotates from 0 all the way to 2.25, and one rotation of that will equal one dash here. You can see from 15 to 17.5. Or I shouldn't say all the way, that's 2.25 goes all the way to 2.5 back to 0 here. So that way you can increment by rotating this collar like so. So I have it set with the 0 right at the 15 dash, which is 15 foot-pounds. I just locked this guy down. I'm going to do my star pattern, go up here. It's going to take a lot of rotation now. This is after I just snugged things up with the impact. Sorry for the camera there. Well, this one's spinning a lot more than the other. Normally I want to get a little more snug than that to get the first, there we go, right there. because now I know that these two are going to be pretty loose. You obviously, the goal here is to tighten these as simultaneously as possible. So that was a little more rotation than I want to do, but you know, once you're going to be going around this multiple times, you know, these ones that are making torque right now are going to be loose by the time you finish this rotation around the wheel, I mean. And then you're going to do that a couple times. Sorry, my camera is so bad. You're going to do that a couple times before everything is tight. I say a couple, it's probably going to be 3 or 4 before, you know, nothing moves. Okay. So I just did these 4. So what I'll do now is go to the next one. It's pretty tedious. Do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way around, all 24. I do that a couple times, and then once it gets pretty close, then I'll just go around the world and bring it up to 15.5, which is the final spec. One thing I should point out, when I call this a star pattern, or what I was saying is I was going 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it would technically be better, you know, or more true to a star, to then go to the middle of the 2 that I just did. You know, try to distribute this as much as possible. The reason I do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just index by 1 and do the same again is it's honestly just so much easier to keep track of my progress. To completely jump across this, it's really hard to save my spot or remember my spot. And it's probably more important to do things evenly, even if it's indexing by 1, than to try and do it, you know, more evenly, but lose your spot and, you know, miss a torque or double torque one, you know. So that's why I do it that way. It's probably best to obviously do as, you know, far between as you can all the way through, but I've had good luck with just doing 1, 2, 3, 4, index by 1, do the next set of 4, and so on. All right, so after doing the star pattern a couple times, things are clicking with pretty minimal rotation. So in the interest of time, what I do now is I just go 1, 2, 3, 4 around all 24 and just get, you know, a little click. I do that at 15 foot-pounds, and then I'll inch that up to 15.5. All right, I got this one torqued up. Just to give you guys a heads up, I probably went around this 10 times, you know, not 2 or 3. The goal was to go around until I could complete every single one with a click with 0 rotation. Keep in mind, every time you rotate a bolt, even just slightly, you've loosened the ones next to it. So that's why it's important to go around until every single one clicks without any rotation. Takes a while, but that's the right way to do it. I may have mentioned this before, but I use balance beads in my tires. I actually used steel BBs on the first 8,000 miles, but they were pretty noisy, so I decided to buy proper balance beads. When I say they're noisy, at the speed where you transition from, you know, low speed beads at the bottom to high speed, maybe, you know, 15 miles an hour is when they start to spool up. You'll hear them kind of ping on the rim. Didn't really hurt the rim at all. It's just annoying to listen to. So, you know, the proper balance beads are much smaller, much finer, and much quieter. You can get these on Amazon. Each bag is 10 ounces. And in fact, that's why each of my tires have 10 ounces in. I should have at least a pound. It worked fine with 10 ounces, but today I'm going to supplement with some extra since I've had time to get some more. I should also mention that reclaiming them is kind of a chore. I had to clean out the shop vac so it was spotless, so that I wouldn't have a whole bunch of junk in there with the balance beads. And that was pretty effective, but if you don't want to do that, then make sure you just buy a bunch of extra when you vacuum up the old stuff. You can install these a few ways. I've seen some people pour them through the valve stem. I just dump it right here on the bead. And here, once I get this dumped out, and again, I'll probably put half of this bag in. You grab a screwdriver here and just kind of feed it in. Make sure that you don't have anything on the bead. You know, even if you got to wipe it down and waste a few of them, you want to make sure you get a good seal. But it's not too hard to get them in there. I'm not going to bother filming that because I need both hands. All right, this tire is totally done. I was going to show you guys how I like to set the bead on my tires. There's a lot of ways you can do it. You've probably seen people, you know, put a little bit of starter fluid in there and light it. Of course, if you do that, you got to immediately put air in it or else it's going to start to contract again. I always keep the valve stem out to get maximum flow. Of course, I have a reasonably high flow filler. But as far as getting a good seat, I like to just set it on a drum. If you're having issues getting, if you have the tire on its side, you may have issues getting any air pressure to build up because it's leaking straight out of the bead. I like to set it right on a 5-gallon pail and just let the weight of the tire keep a little bit of pressure on the bead. And that's all it takes. Once it gets to about, 20 PSI, you'll probably hear the bead ping. It's pretty loud. And then I, finish it out the rest of the way, put the valve stem in and check the pressure.